Before I start, I just want to thank everyone who supports the channel. It's been growing really fast, and we recently hit 1,000 subscribers. This is a huge milestone, and I'm grateful for it. It's cool to see so many people care about women's basketball. Even if someone disagrees with me, I'm glad the interest is there to have conversations about women's basketball. If you like the channel now, you haven't seen nothing yet. There's some long-term plans in the works. We are working on a new video series and hope to have it ready in the next 2 weeks. But there's even some bigger things coming later. But that's enough teasing. Time to talk some basketball. The first week of basketball is over, and it was amazing. This video is about what teams should be worried after week 1 and what teams will be fine even though they lost. I'll start with Notre Dame because that's my team. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. I really said Notre Dame was gonna beat South Carolina. Then Notre Dame gets embarrassed. I always knew South Carolina was the better team, but I thought our experience would take over because South Carolina would have early chemistry issues. It was the opposite. I got roasted for saying they would win, and I deserve it, but I'm not remotely worried about this. All these Notre Dame fans got their heads down. If this was a team like Ohio State or Virginia Tech, I would understand why people are worried. But there's not a single team in the country that can emulate what South Carolina just did. In terms of bench depth, size, and athleticism, they are a one of one. Maryland got torched too, real bad. People will probably call them trash afterwards, but it's not their fault. South Carolina is on a different stratosphere than everyone else. Obviously, I wanted to win, but I saw some huge things that can be taken away from this game. I'm thinking long term. When I broke down Notre Dame, I didn't mention Nat Marshall because she hasn't been a factor since she got there. Y'all know how every team has that player that's great for the locker room and will occasionally play, but no one expects anything out of them. That was Nat. I don't know what she did this offseason, but she looks so much better. I'll take 8 points and 6 rebounds against a team with a front court like South Carolina any day. If she can knock down mid-ranges at 6'5", that's going to be huge for Notre Dame. She had some quality defensive possessions too. I saw more out of her Monday than I did in 3 years. Notre Dame's post depth is a problem, but if Nat is going to be doing that, then there won't be any issues with the post. West Bell looks in way better shape than she did last season. She looks like she did her freshman year. Her ball handling is better, her shot looks better, and she's moving better. I'm not worried about her going 5 for 14. No one's front court is even half of South Carolina's. Last, but certainly not least, Hannah Hidalgo. I already thought this anyway, but that game is all the confirmation I needed. I don't care she's only a freshman. The gap between her and Olivia Miles is not very big, which would mean she's one of the best guards in the country. Everybody is going crazy over Georgia. A. Moore's career high, 31-point performance against Iowa. She did this shooting 10 for 23 from the field. She had a good performance, no doubt, but she did that against Iowa, who easily has the worst defense out of any top 10 team, can't guard a traffic cone. Hannah Hidalgo dropped 31 points on 10 for 24 shooting against South Carolina, aka the best defense in the country. There ain't a single person that can hold her in the ACC. The crazy part is, she's a pass-first player, so when people try to double, that's going to leave teammates open. Hannah Hidalgo's defense is already better than most players. She had 3 steals, and when she wasn't stealing, she is playing relentless defense. I feel the same way about Maryland. I think it's ridiculous to use the blowout loss to South Carolina as evidence they aren't good teams. There's very few teams, if any, that actually would have done better. Of course, this doesn't mean Notre Dame doesn't have issues they need to fix. Neil Ivey is going to have to find a way to make Emma Rich more effective. Citron is very inconsistent, so they will need another 3-point shooter. It will also free up Hidalgo. I'm not the biggest fan of Anna Day Wolf in the starting lineup either. I hope it's just a temporary solution. But I talked about Notre Dame long enough. It's time to move on. Indiana got absolutely massacred by Stanford. To say they should be worried is an understatement. This is a team that choked in the Big Ten tournament and lost at home to Miami in the national tournament. Now they play a ranked team, and their best player gets humiliated, along with the rest of the team. It wasn't even competitive after the first quarter. This team played with no heart, no fire. If they lose to Tennessee 2 weeks from now, I'm completely done with Indiana. Speaking of Tennessee, that's another team to worry about. Rickea Jackson had the performance of a lifetime. Tennessee as a team shot 50% from 3, and they still lost to Florida State. Rickea is doing her best to carry, and it wasn't enough. To make matters worse, Rickea Jackson is apparently dealing with an injury. If she isn't healthy, the season is over. Tamari Keys' lack of minutes the past few games suggest that she isn't fully healthy. I hope Tennessee can get back to full strength, because they already have a lot to deal with as is. Ohio State lost to USC, but I think people are overreacting. USC was always way better than their ranking. Ohio State actually played a good game, but Juju Watkins is just built different. Their lack of size is a problem, but their press allows them to circumvent that. It also helps that a lot of teams seem to downsize at the same time. Should Uconn be worried? Absolutely, but not because of their roster. They have everything they need. They have multiple point guards, a bench, and they have post players. They should be worried because of Gino. This is purely a coaching issue. They didn't lose because of the roster. They lost because Gino got outsmarted and outcoached. He needs to stop with the small ball crap and develop other posts besides Aaliyah Edwards. Why is Caroline Ducharme in the starting lineup? There's no reason for this. What does she provide that the other players don't? He needs to develop his posts so Uconn can stop getting abused in the paint. In terms of roster strength, Uconn isn't overrated. It's a misuse of their personnel. It's a lack of discipline, specifically when it comes to rebounding and defending. That's the difference between South Carolina and Uconn right now. One coach is properly using their roster, and the other isn't. If I was an Iowa fan, I would be extremely worried. What we saw Thursday was exactly what I said a few weeks ago when I talked about Iowa. Caitlin Clark has to carry even more than she did last year. Caitlin Clark had 44 points, 6 assists, 8 rebounds, and only 1 turnover. Iowa only won by 4 points. If Kitley actually attacked the paint that game, the result would have been very different. Caitlin Clark has to be Goku just for Iowa to keep up with a ranked opponent. That's a recipe for disaster and can easily lead to an early tournament exit. Iowa has an already weak schedule, and I don't know if the Big Ten will properly prepare them. It's definitely weaker this year, and it's very undersized. The Kansas State game will be very interesting, because if Ayoka Lee completely destroys them in the paint, that could be trouble for later. There's teams with better supporting casts that have a post player with her abilities that they may face in the tournament. LSU is a weird one. They didn't look good versus Colorado. They won by a lot of points, but giving up 79 points to a team like Kent State is not a good sign. What do you think a real team will do? They have no point guard outside of a freshman they refuse to play. But Michaela Williams has looked like the generational talent people thought she could be. Samaya Smith has showed a lot of promise too. I don't think Angel will be the dominant force she was last year, but I expect her to turn it around. Another thing LSU has going for them is that no one has looked extremely dominant outside of South Carolina. Stanford did some serious damage to Indiana, and it's definitely a team I'm keeping my eye on. But I want to see how they do against Duke first. I think Stanford will win either way, but I want to see how easy they do it. Duke gave a better fight against a team full of WNBA players than Indiana gave Stanford, so the Duke game will show if Stanford really is that dominant or if Indiana is just on some BS this season. Utah lost to Baylor yesterday. That's the problem with Utah. They can beat anyone, but also lose to anyone. This team almost beat LSU, but the game before they struggled with Princeton. Last year, Utah would beat teams like Stanford and UCLA, but lose to a team like Washington State or almost blow a game to Oregon State. This is one of those teams that you don't want to go against, but at the same time, they are extremely upset prone. That's it for today. What are some teams you think people are overreacting to, and what teams should be concerned about? As always, thanks for watching.